My name is Joe Buskins. I'm a second-generation professional boat builder, a 100-ton licensed captain, and this is our family's boat shop. We've got a ton of videos, and I think this one's gonna be a good one for people, especially if you just want a good foundational knowledge of how to fiberglass and you wanna learn from a pro. We're gonna go ahead and start with a little bit of resin getting mixed up. I wanna prime this surface just a bit. Now, we're not gonna go real crazy. We're not gonna go with a lot. Let's say, for example, we're gonna go with about 16 ounces or so. So we're at 16 ounces, and I got a little cheat sheet here, folks, that we always have on the channel. 16 ounces is gonna need about 5 to 10 cc's. I'm not going super hot today. I'm gonna give her about 5 or 6 cc's of MEKP, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, is what we're using to activate this. This is a standard activator for all of your vinyl esters, polyesters, gel coat. And I like to do what I call a two-pot method. Basically, with a two-pot method, we're gonna mix it in a metered mixing cup. Usually you're gonna see a little bit of a color change. And then we're gonna transfer it over into a pan. That's gonna minimize the chances of you missing or having some unmixed material in your batch. And when you put it into a pan, that's gonna give this thing a little more airflow, a little more surface area, and generally that'll extend your cure times out a bit. So it'll give you a little longer working window. All right, like it. Get all of that good stuff out of there. Now, now's a good time to mention too, folks, a lot of the products we're using, big fan of Fiberglass Warehouse. They've got all these products available on their website and more, and be sure to take advantage of their FISHBUMPTV discount code, especially the structural putty, the vinyl esters, and the gel coats. Those are things you need in your kit at home if you're gonna be doing any amount of fiberglass work. Load that roller up nice and full. And I'm actually gonna try to get a little bit of resin down here in some of these voids and crevices. Bit of what I would call a primer coat. A lot of times people wanna kind of skimp on the resin and go for a dry, they're going for a real dry layup. And in my opinion, I would rather have your surface a little oversaturated or on the wet side. A dry laminate is not a good thing, especially for something like this. This is gonna be holding water all the time. Now, what's cool about what we're building here, folks, or repairing rather, is a good old box. So many things you could do with this. You could build it out of some foam board or even like Coosa board and have some insulating properties. If you wanted to build some kind of a tank to hold your own live bait at home, which I've actually kind of been thinking about doing that here for us, because in the summertime we fish with a lot of live bait. Sometimes it's hard to keep it or hold it. So I don't know if we got any live bait fishermen out there, but pretty hard to go wrong with some good fresh live bait. And little boxes maybe to sit on. Seating could be an example. Now, we've got a bit of a crevice or a crack there along this seam. It's kind of opened up there, and I want to try to get, sometimes you can kind of run that roller at an angle, and you can see how it's actually going in that seam and filling it up. I'm going at if you can notice, I'm running at an angle. You want to catch those drips before they make a big mess. Y'all will also notice we got some masking paper on the floor. Try to keep our work nice and tidy. Want to do nice work. Now this, even though it needs to be waterproof and it needs to be sturdy, this is not yacht caliber or high end. We're not trying to make this super fancy or yacht caliber. And a lot of stuff, I kind of just call it commercial or work boat grade. So it needs to be tough, it needs to be waterproof, but sometimes folks at home stress too much. If you're a DIYer, you're watching some of the stuff that we do, or maybe some other folks do some real high-end work and you're like, man, my stuff doesn't look like theirs, but a lot of times getting just a good, solid, sturdy job done, making it seaworthy and watertight is all you need. I actually find I enjoy boats. If I have a boat, if it's too fancy, it's hard to enjoy it. If the kids spill a drink or folks get in the boat with some sand, you don't want to have to be running around worrying about it all the time. So I kind of like a workboat type grade of material. All right, you can see we got, again, a bit of a crack there, and I'm going to kind of run that roller at an angle and try to work some of that resin into that void. If you've never done fiberglass work before, but maybe you've done some auto body or sheetrock finishing, for example, those skills may translate into this. So a lot of the folks in the trades, but we're finding people that even if you don't have a background in the trades, a lot of people are finding they can do fiberglass work. I would recommend starting with something small and easy. And maybe if you've never even bought any fiberglass or dealt with it, order you a quart or two of some of the different materials and just kind of play around, experiment. Oh yeah, I just had a gentleman comment from the UK. He's working on a 23-footer and he's been doing a major refit, and he's got a background in plaster work. He said it kind of translates a little bit into the fiberglass side of things. My apologies, I don't recall your name. I just read the comment, but thank you so much. From the Wales in the UK, so you know who you are, the 23-foot offshore fishing boat. So thank you so much for your support of the channel, and I wish you all the best. And y'all will notice there is still a little bit of white gel coat on the bottom, but I've scuffed it up. You can see the sander marks there and the grooves, and the vinyl ester resin has no trouble bonding or sticking to that at all, not a problem. But it does need to be surfaced somewhat. So fiberglass resin can stick over gel coat, but you would want to sand partially through it or almost all of it off of there. I don't know if you folks at home have seen one of these. I grew up, they call them a 5-in-1, but now they've added a bunch of features, can openers. Some people say they're a 10-in-1 or 12-in-1. You can use them as a scraper to open up cans, to scrape or dig stuff out. But this little feature right here, check this out, folks. Let's just say we got some porosity there. Watch what this little jewel will do. Oh yeah. Tell me that's not cool. You would never believe there was that much resin in that roller. That's probably a half a pint of resin in that roller. I mean, it's substantial. And then what I can do, you could rinse that roller, but I typically just use fairly inexpensive. These are 3/8 nap. I buy these from Lowe's. I also have some in our Amazon store, which we've been working really hard on our Amazon store. Almost all the tools and supplies that we use are either available through Fiberglass Warehouse or our Amazon store, which is listed below our video's description. So we've got a bunch of the resin, and then you can just take a nice bristle hair brush, especially over here where we got a bunch of voids in the surface that I don't love. And I promise you folks, if you're new to the channel, our videos tend to be very detailed and in-depth. You're gonna learn something, I guarantee it. Any of you pros out there, or people that have been doing this a while, and you got any tips or tricks you wanna share with the channel? So here's a little piece of debris. Sometimes you'll get a little something. I like to keep a trash can handy, your work table handy. We've worked our resin into that seam really good, got a primer coat. So we've got a couple ounces of our vinyl ester structural putty put out on our little mixing board. Now the mixing board, you want something non-porous. This is a plastic, it's actually some old signboard material. Works very good. You could use aluminum. I would not recommend using cardboard because it can draw or soak some of the solvents out of your putties and fillers, and that's not good. And vinyl ester is going to be superior to polyester in a lot of ways, and this is a structural putty, which means it has some thickeners and additives in there. It's going to make it stronger, perfect for fillets and bonding and even transom core. Also really good for filling cracks and whatnot, like on our bait tank. So our little cheat sheet here, it got smeared there, folks, but about 1 ounce of material is 10 to 20 drops. So I'm gonna go pretty easy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can see I made that little divot in there, and that's a good place. Okay, now some folks, again, if you're new to this, I grew up in a boat shop. I've mixed thousands of gallons of this material, and I guess you kind of take it for granted sometimes, or you just get so used to it. But I know if you're new to it, sometimes people can get what I call analysis paralysis. They're analyzing it so much and they're being so cautious, they never move forward with their project. And honestly, this stuff, there is a range of like the amount of catalyst you can put in these putties that's still totally workable. And sometimes people let that stop them from moving forward. But just remember, when it's colder temperatures, you're gonna want to use more catalyst, so closer to 20 drops per ounce. And if it's hot or warm, like it is today, is quite nice. Honestly, like 70s to low 80s is pretty ideal. On the low end, about 60 degrees is kind of the minimum. And on the high end, anything over like 90, 95 gets really hard to control and manage. The material cures really, really fast. So there are also tricks and techniques you can use to help speed things along when it's cold. I've got videos here on the channel. We've got over 200 videos currently on everything, all the way from actually the build of our 29 footer there that's in the background. We actually built the mold, the pattern, laid up the hull, installed the engines, wiring, everything, all the way to our project boat that you see behind us, and then tons of just tutorial grade gel coat epoxy repair videos for the DIYers out there. So y'all also let me know. I'd love to know what kind of project you're working on at home. So feel free to comment down below. I will do my very best to read all the comments and to respond to as many as I can. So thank y'all so much. All right, so generally at least a minute or so of mix time. I like to kind of chop through it, scoop it, lay it back over itself. This doesn't really change colors, so you just have to mix it till you're sure. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna start by getting some on there. It doesn't have to be perfect at first. Remember, sometimes people expect too much out of themselves, or they expect perfection on the first pass, and that is just not gonna be realistic. So get some on there, and you can kind of come back and dress it. It also, if you're working in hot weather and you're mixing batches of putty, one way to get extended cure or pot life is to spread the putty out, and that way you got airflow over it. Whenever it's in a large mass or a thick bunch, it's gonna produce heat within itself. It's called an exothermic reaction. And so anytime you can spread it out, get some airflow over it. That actually looks pretty good, but there's a little spot right down there. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. This does not need to be perfect because we are going to be fiberglassing over this before it even has a chance to set or cure. Float that over. Even though we've got actively curing resin, these materials are completely compatible. Just remember, temperatures need to generally be around 60 degrees. If you can work indoors, that is going to be a huge advantage. You can use some halogen heat lamps sometimes. You can use something simple as your little Wagners that we showed you earlier to warm up your surfaces. Now, I tend to work fast because I've done this a long time, and in a family's boat shop, we want to do quality work, but you need to get it done. You don't want to drag things out. And I've said that before, even in different videos. I know folks at home have limited time maybe to get their projects done, and there's no point in making it take longer than it needs to. My dad was a big believer in the KISS principle. I wonder if any of you folks grew up with the same thing as I did, or you know what that is, the KISS principle. Comment down below if you know what that means. Now I'm gonna go with a bigger batch this time, folks. Let's go with, last time was around 16 ounces. That was around 500 milliliters for our friends on the metric system, which makes me think, all of our friends in the UK, Australia, Canada, all around the world, we thank y'all so much for tuning in, and everywhere else. It's always fun to hear where everybody is watching from. I'm only gonna go with about 10 cc's today. You can see that that vinyl ester has changed colors pretty rapidly. That's a sign that we're getting a chemical reaction, which is what we want. Usually about 1 minute a mix, or around 100 cycles or rotations is gonna be good to go. Now I have put in a fresh liner or a tray. We're using these little disposable, just your standard inexpensive. That is real easy. We took the old one from the first batch and we kicked it out. Sometimes you'll get these little jelly balls and stuff in your resin as it cures, and we don't want that in our new batch. Some of you may know this little trick. It's a pretty handy one where you use the tape on your roller, and that'll help pull some of the loose fibers and hairs off of there really well. Does a good job, and I'm using a little bit of acetone in a 5-gallon bucket down here, folks. Probably about a quart of acetone. All right, so we've already got some resin down on the surface. We've got some putty down on the surface, and what we have is some of our pieces of fiberglass are already pre-cut and staged in appropriate lengths, and these are going to be our longer ones for the sides. Let's put down another little base coat of resin. We can go right over the putty. It's not a problem at all. I'm going to position it right end to end. Go ahead and get some resin on this just as quick as you can and let it start saturating. These fabrics have binders in them that are dissolved with the solvents that are in polyester and vinyl ester resins. That's why these materials tend to work better with those types of resins, and that's why here on this channel I tend to use a lot of polyester and vinyl ester resins. And remember, your biaxial is going to be really where your strength is. Your CSM is really good at waterproofing and kind of transitioning or blending over difficult angles, corners, or shapes. I'm excited that we're coming into the boating season and the fishing season. We are actively booking charters right now in our 29-footer. We've actually got quite a few fishing videos for people who have been following the channel. If you've never checked out some of our fishing videos, you can see what me and my son Logan, who's behind the camera, what we do when we're out on our charters or on our fun days or off days. Working with a roller is so much faster than a brush. For bigger jobs like this, there's no reason you would ever want to just try to do this with a brush. That's kind of silly. So we are going to overlap these corners. Even though we're here and here, it's perfectly fine to double that up and beef it up on the corners. When we're building a boat like our 29-footer and laying it up, everywhere the sides meet the bottom, that intersection is called the chine, and that's going to be doubled right in the middle of the boat, the keel of the boat. Your material is going to be doubled up as well. When I was growing up in a boat shop, my dad always told me, like with fiberglass, when we're laminating, is just get some resin on everything that's the widest parts first, and then it'll start to go transparent, and you can always come back around. I just had a gentleman comment on the channel. He was concerned about fiberglassing on a vertical surface, and as you can see, if you put some resin on there as a primer, it's almost like wallpaper glue. You can stick it, and it's amazing how it will hold on a vertical surface. And then we've activated this resin to the hot enough so that it will activate and start to firm up and cure well before this tries to slide. You would not want to work barehanded with this stuff. The chemicals and the fiberglass splinters, not good. See, we got a drip. That's why we want our masking paper on the floor. And folks, don't think you need super fancy tools or a big giant boat shop to do this kind of work. You can totally do this in a little covered shed. You can even rig up a little PVC or 2x4 framework and stretch some visqueen or some tarps over an area in your driveway, and you absolutely can do professional caliber work if you're using quality materials and you follow the process. Even though I've done this kind of work thousands of times, I kind of walked through it in my mind. So lay all this stuff out, be sure you got some help, work around the job, plan the job. Y'all have heard me say this before. I used to have a buddy, he said, plan the work and work the plan. And I'm doing this in the evening before I go home, so this has all night to fully set and cure. Now I'm coming back, you can see that laminate's a little dry looking, and you can see how there it's nice and wet. After it's had a little time to saturate, let's come back. And this was the first. If y'all remember, the long ones were the first ones I did. And as I'm drawing resin out of here, I'm kind of mixing it, I'm pulling it from the back of the pan. A lot of times, back here in the back is where you'll get these little jelly balls if you try to mix too many batches. So sometimes you can take a brush and pull that out of there. Y'all comment down below if you think my son Logan's doing a good job at keeping up with me. I know. Moving around a bunch, man. Moving around a bunch. Logan has been working with me since he was a boy and knows he usually can anticipate which way I'm going. That's a real blessing if you can have a son or a daughter that works with you in your profession. So we are going straight to our longer pieces. So again, we got everything staged and ready. Now this is what we call CSM. It's a thinner, lighter material. And I've got videos here on the channel on how best to cut it and shape it and form it. You can see over here, we'll jump over here super quick though. Having some kind of a table, some good scissors, some little electric shears. These things are just absolutely awesome. You want to cut everything from CSM to even like cutting peel ply. If you guys want to know what peel ply does or is, but having a little, and again, you can do some sawhorses and a piece of plywood can totally work. And Fiberglass Warehouse can also send you these materials. So if you need any CSM, any peel ply, any 1708. So I'm basically gonna let this kind of feather out over the edge. And you can see when you're looking at the 1708, it leaves this kind of a hard ridge. But when you go over it with the CSM, it kind of helps blend and transition it, and it's gonna help. And don't worry about that little corner there. I wanna show you, we're gonna dress that out beautifully. This thing's gonna be primo. Look how nice, look at the difference. And what I did here, folks, is I tore this CSM off of the roll. And again, if you scroll back through the video library, we've got a couple videos talking very specifically in detail about how to cut and shape and tear different kinds of fiberglass fabric. All right, here we go. We're just gonna kind of roll this over the edge a little bit, and sometimes I will kind of help it down like so. Oh yeah, that's looking pretty. But you can take these fiberglass principles, folks, and apply it to all kinds of things. I know people are building like planter boxes, koi ponds, water tanks, vinyl ester. You can actually build fuel tanks in certain applications. It's very good at resisting moisture intrusion, and vinyl ester resins are used in a lot of industrial applications. Quite honestly, it's probably a little bit overkill for a job like this. I like it right on the edge first. And you can see this corner, we got nice overlap here, and we can kind of start to pull this around and finish that corner out. You talk about heavy duty, that's tough. We got some folks following the channel that are sailors, that are out, and you could be in very odd and random places, and you may not be able to access these materials from where you are, not a bad idea to have a little kit of these materials and supplies, and you could put it in a fairly small waterproof case and carry it with you. Vinyl ester is hard to beat for its versatility and its strength and waterproofing, and I would highly recommend keeping some of it and maybe some of the structural putty on board for emergency situations. If you can see, I kind of just pulled that corner down. CSM will kind of tear and pull, and you can use that to your advantage. Look how nice we got that corner happening. Some people try to get it perfect on the first layer. I'm using the roller. We're just using our hands and a roller to pull. Look at that. Woo! I like it. I like it a lot. Oh yeah. Now, a little different. This terminates here at the end, and I don't want a bunch of fiberglass hairs hanging, so I did trim this CSM so that it's straight on the bottom and we don't have a lot of overhang there. My dad bought some fiberglass when he was in the Air Force as a young man and built a small boat in their apartment, my mom and dad's apartment, when he was a young guy, and didn't actually finish it before he was able to come home, and they strapped it to the top of the car and brought it home from Tennessee. That was back in the 60s. He was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force. He worked on C-130s, the Super Hercs, kind of a cool aircraft, still in production or still in service today, still getting the job done. It's one of my other things I always enjoy seeing aircraft. There's a lot of similarities between aircraft and boats if you think about lift and drag and control surfaces, and a lot of the modern aircraft are built with advanced composites materials, which fiberglass is kind of a generic phrase or term, but in the industry a lot of people will say composites, and that would include working with foam cores and epoxy and vinyl esters, and you get into some really fancy stuff. I've had a few people that are following the channel that are in the aircraft industry, and that's some high-end work. That's next level. I've actually been thinking about building a big custom insulated, like what we call a coffin box or a fish box for our 29 that we run in our summertime charter business. Occasionally we get to go way offshore and target big fish like yellowfin tuna and wahoo and big amberjack, and sometimes it's hard to get those big fish in my current fish box, but you could certainly use Coosa board and a combination of foam to build a box like this and reinforce the corners. You could build your own bait tank. Knowing how to build a nice waterproof box, not a bad thing. Here's the old handy dandy acetone bucket. We got two different little style rollers. Now sometimes people ask me about acetone contaminating the resin we're working on, but acetone evaporates very rapidly, and I will take a brush and just do that, and you are good to go. Same goes for the rollers. If they're wet, I'll usually shake them, hit them a few times, and you are perfectly fine. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pick up a little more resin, and that's almost like putting a little bit of flour on your rolling pin. We got any bakers out there? Anybody's done bread? You put a little bit of flour on there, and that kind of keeps it from sticking. And that's kind of the idea. You get a little bit of fresh resin on there, really makes that look pretty, blends and transitions nicely, and it also helps these rollers work. Like if you think you got some bubbles in there, oh yeah, that levels it out. And I'm gonna go from top down. We're gonna go from top in. top down. Now, if you were doing something super critical below the water line, you might want to spend a little more time on this. But again, folks, this is a pretty basic component, and I'm going way overkill. This is way tougher than it ever was. We're gonna bust all those bubbles. If you do quality glass work and smooth it out, you have to do minimal sanding. Every now and again, the roller will pick up a little bit of the hair, but don't fret. Rolling it down. We're kind of pulling it tight, if you can imagine. We're pulling that fabric into the surface, and very methodically, folks. If you'll notice, I'm doing this with a system. I'm doing all of the same of a given length. We're starting from top and we're working our way down. I like to start from the top and work our way down because resin is going to run with the gravity. So if you start at the top, anything that runs, you're going to kind of be working to the material rather than working against the material. Oh yeah. All right, so your roller can go in your acetone bucket. And then at this point, if you got extra eyes, get out the brush, and occasionally you'll have, like, see, there's a little stray hair that fell. You can do a little bit of what my dad called dabbing. We can touch up any little stray hairs, look for any little bubbles, and again, we're very methodically. We're going from front to back, left to right, looking for little splinters. Now, be mindful. See these little jokers right there, folks? If you're doing this kind of work after that cures, you would never ever want to rub your hand across raw fiberglass. You will 100% get a splinter, and they're hard to get out. So just remember that. All right, look at there. There's a couple little ones. We can just dab them down, and then we can hit this with a little bit of sandpaper. Now, some people, there's a little bit of confusion about having to seal resin or something like this with wax or resin with wax. But like in this case, we're coming over this with gel coat tomorrow. So we want it receptive and tacky and sticky. And that way the gel coat can molecularly bond with this vinyl ester resin, which again, that's one of the beautiful things about vinyl ester. It's completely compatible with gel coat, unlike epoxy in a lot of situations. And it's also completely compatible with the CSM, which I really love CSM when it comes to blending and transitioning, because it makes for a really nice and professional grade looking fiberglass job. So yesterday afternoon, we got a ton of fiberglass work done on our fish box. We did finish up down on these corners, and I've already actually started sanding and prepping this a little bit in preparation for some gel coat. Now we're going to be doing 2 coats, one without wax and one with wax. But before we start applying gel coat, let's get a little bit of prep work done. That's always a big part of doing this kind of work. Now, some PPE is always a good idea. And remember, for you DIYers at home, we do this professionally, so we have some professional grade tools, but you don't have to have top end, the ultimate, or exactly like we do. If you got something, say for example, we've got a big Makita electric die grinder with a big carbide burr, that would kind of be the ultimate. But if you've got a little compressor and you can get just an inexpensive die grinder with a smaller carbide burr, that can absolutely work fine. You could even use like a heavy duty rasp if you have one to open this up. But as of right now, I'm going to show y'all how we're going to open this up. All right, now that's pretty good. Now you can always come back in there. I love these little 3M blocks, by the way, and a Velcro pad. 40 grit paper can work really good for just getting the rough stuff, the big bits. Remember though, fiberglass splinters are unpleasant, so just be mindful. Never want to rub your hands down the edges. Now that's where a block like this really comes in though. On these corners, for example, even if you get a little bit of gumming, it's not a big deal. A lot of times all you need to do is knock down the points and the splinters. If you buy sandpaper by the box, it's relatively inexpensive. And it's kind of interesting, this gummed up stuff, if you give it a little while to sit on the disc, this probably won't do it now because it's really fresh, but a lot of times you can take a disc after it's been sitting a while and you can get this stuff to pop out of the grit and you can get more life. The sandpaper is not wore out. Now if this has had a little time to sit, it works better. Sometimes you can even just hit it and knock some of those gummy bits out of there. Take out your frustration too, folks. But, yeah, need a little 3M. We'll put a link to this in our videos, in our Amazon store below our video's description. So just hand sand, that's 40 grit. That's gonna do the job really, really nicely. Now, one of my other favorite tools for this kind of work is this little high-speed Makita with some 36 grit. And these things work really, really well. Again, you don't have to have this, but you can. That's really all you need to do for this kind of work. We are not shooting again for yacht caliber. And honestly, a lot of the work that you DIYers at home, whether you're building an insulated fish box, you may look at this and be like, I gotta sand that perfect. But as you add coat 1, 2, 3 of your gel coat, it'll kind of flow into the low spots and make everything look really, really nice. So don't let that drive you crazy. A quality roller is going to be a good idea. Now, when we're laminating fiberglass, usually it's using something fairly inexpensive and kind of throwaway because we're usually going to do some sanding. But Corona makes a really good one. They call that a glass coater, or any one of your higher end, nicer rollers. Still going to be a good idea with your gel coat. Still a good idea to wrap it in tape. Now, these come obviously in full size, and then I like to use my bandsaw and just cut these things right in half. I tend to prefer using these smaller rollers for a lot of our smaller jobs. If you were gel coating the floor or the interior floor of your whole boat, then I would definitely use one of the larger ones. And you can see there's a lot less of the hairs that come off of that one. That's a good quality gel coat finish worthy roller for sure. Now, super important on the first coat, we're going without wax. Now, if you're only going to buy one gel coat or one container gel coat for your kit at home, I would generally recommend buying it without wax, and then you can add or buy a surface seal or wax solution. This is also available through Fiberglass Warehouse, everything we have here. But you can add that at around 3 to 5% by volume for your gel coat, and you're going to get essentially gel coat with wax. I think we're going to go with around 16 ounces or so, and you're looking around 450, 460 milliliters. Super important to always agitate or mix up your gel coat just a little bit. Also important to remember, when temperatures get cold, sometimes the gel coat with wax, it'll want to separate a little bit. So important to keep it relatively warm. We also have the little plug in there, which is how these come. This is exactly why you wear some PPE there, folks. Sometimes when you pull that little plug out of there, gotta have some shop towels handy. And I'm just using standard latex gloves there, folks, just in case you're curious. Nothing too fancy. If you want more protection, sometimes people are concerned about keeping the chemicals, really keeping them off your hands. Or as you work, you can run double glove, 2 pairs, and that way if one gets all gunked up, you can shed it and roll right on to your next one. All right, so let's try that again. Around 15 or 16 ounces. It's a little bit more, but that's okay. 16 ounces per our cheat sheet, 5 to 10 cc's, but I want this to kind of cook right on along today. So I'm gonna kick it up a notch. We're gonna go with 10 cc's. That's gonna be fairly spicy. Gotta have plenty of your wooden stirring paddles, a good thorough mix. You could do this with a drill, power drill and a mixer, but a lot of times these smaller batches, I think it's just simpler and more efficient to do it with the little wooden stirring sticks. They get right down in the very bottom. I like to scrape the edges, make sure you're hitting the bottom, and then turn the whole mass. Sometimes I'll even rotate the cup as we're mixing. Be sure to get a good thorough mix. Very excited this time of the year. It's perfect weather for fiberglass work. So if you got a project you're ready to get into, those 60s, 70s, and even low 80s, but man, really the 60s and 70s are amazing. Fairly low humidity is what you're looking for. Surface temps today, you need one of these little doodads in your kit if you're going to be doing this kind of work. 27 Celsius or 81 Fahrenheit. So that is primo. This is going to go pretty fast. You're going to have about 10 or 15 minutes of working time. Matter of fact, in a job like this, one thing you can do to speed the process along, I normally will put this in a pan and then roll out of the pan, but being that we got a big flat surface and the roller is going to kind of agitate it, I'm going to be sure to get a good mix on here. Here we go, folks. We're just going to get after it this way. All right, that's a good starting point for the bottom. We may transfer some of that. We'll see how far that goes. Oh yeah, looks nice to get some gel coat on it. Gel coat seems to be a mystery for a lot of people. I kind of just so used to working with it. We've done it our whole entire life. But every now and again, it'll still do something. You're kind of like, well, that was unexpected. But it's usually if you skip one of the steps, temperature or surface prep. Now, I'm not going to wipe this surface down with any kind of acetone or anything for this coat because this is perfectly clean, brand new and fresh. And we've already wiped down all the other stuff prior. And I've been working with gloves, so I have no concerns about surface contamination. Now, yes, you could spray this. I'm a big fan of rolling because it's simple and it's really good. The roller will help. Like I just filled up a little pinhole there. Everybody can afford a roller. You're gonna come out with a little bit of a textured surface, but on your first coat, that's okay. A lot of times it'll get better and better as you apply more coats. Now on this particular piece, I'm probably only going to do 2 coats. We may do 3, just kind of depending on how the coverage looks as we move along. I like to roll kind of from one direction, and then I like to roll from the other direction and try to get it nice and uniform. Work out of that for the rest of it. You guys watching out there have any friends in the boating community or other platforms that you want to share our channel with? We're also posting a little bit on some other platforms, but YouTube is our main home for our full-length tutorial grade videos. Would greatly appreciate y'all's help in spreading the word about the channel. I'm not a full-time at YouTube thing. We run the charter business in the summer. If anybody want to come down and fish with me, you can look me up. And we also do paying jobs like this. This is paying work for, like I said, a buddy of mine. They've got a tackle store and bait shop, and this is going to be an addition. They're going to be improving. If y'all are ever down our way, you should check them out. That's Beach Bum Outdoors. Yeah, they can hook you up with all kind of good fishing gear. Sometimes you'll have little pinholes, and that's what I do like about a roller. If you look, a lot of times a roller will do a pretty good job of working the material in there. Sometimes they'll resurface, but usually on the second and or third coat, you're going to be able to get those sealed up, no problem. Remember, folks, we're in an open air shop, and I've done this my whole life, but I only do it without a mask every now and again when we're videoing. But if you're at home, I would recommend a quality respirator, plenty of airflow. It's been about an hour since we applied our coated gel coat, and it has what we call tacked off. So when I touch this, even though this has no wax in it, we're not getting any residue come off my fingers. It's not sticky really at all, just very subtly. But one thing I did to kind of move things along is I like to use a little Wagner heat source or something similar. And especially if you're in colder climates, you can use this to kind of warm up the surface. You just got to be very careful to continue to move, stay about a foot away from the surface, and then monitor it with your heat gun or with your infrared temperature sensor and kind of keep an eye on it. You can bring the temps up, especially in slightly cooler weather or as you get toward the afternoon or evening hours. Sometimes it cools and it'll slow the cure rate of your gel coat down. But this is what we're looking for. It's not sticky, not coming off on my fingertips. That looks good. I'm happy with it. Now, the easiest way to go with your second coat would be to just order gel coat with wax. And if you're going to do it a bigger project, works completely fine. But if you're only going to have 1 gallon of gel coat, typically again without wax, and then you can get some of the surface seal, and you can get this in a smaller container, a smaller amount. And I usually go pretty rich with this stuff. I like, as a general rule of thumb, if you got, again, where it's about 16 ounces or so, or maybe just a touch over about 500 milliliters for our friends in other parts of the world, shake up your modifier C, make sure that the wax isn't solidified inside. If you look in there, we got a really nice clear liquid. The wax is dissolved in there. And for control, a lot of times I like to pour it in the cap, and then usually enough to like completely cover the surface. Now, honestly, I haven't really found a problem with adding more than what is typically recommended. I would say 5%, sometimes even maybe up to even 7%. I feel like if you want a good non-tacky waxy surface, go ahead and put a little bit extra in there. And then a good thorough mix before activating this with your MEKP or your modifier, or your MEKP or your methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Because once you add the catalyst, the activation or the curing starts at that point, and we want to have maximum working time. So I like to thoroughly mix the wax solution in first. Again, this is available through Fiberglass Warehouse there. Folks, be sure to take advantage of their FISHBUMPTV discount code. We've also got a very decent Facebook group page that if you're doing a project and want to see other folks that are following the channel and see what they're doing and how they're doing things and maybe learn from some of their experiences, feel free to check out our Facebook group page. That is growing rapidly, and we just want to welcome everybody. Thank y'all so much for your support of the channel. It is greatly appreciated. Really, really is. All right, so 16 ounces. We're going to go again. I was pretty happy with how that went. So a good solid 10 cc's. Actually, just a smidge over, because we're a little bit over the 16 ounces. So that's about 11 cc's or so. and a good thorough mix. Be sure to check out these. That's one of our most popular items on our Amazon store, is our little catalyst dispensers. They are handy dandy. All right, very good. Now, of course, with white gel coat, you can also tint this. If you got some pigments available, you can get, you can come up with grays and light blues and some of your other colors. So white is a good one to have around. And then Fiberglass Warehouse also has the feature that if you're trying to match some of your boat's gel coat, if you're trying to match some of your boat's gel coat, you can go to Sherwin-Williams and pick up a color code that is closest or most similar to your boat. And if you call Fiberglass Warehouse with that color code, they can match or replicate that code from Sherwin-Williams, which is a pretty cool feature there. And then we're gonna do the same thing there, folks. That was speedy. It's a good way to make the best use of our time and get a good heavy coat on the bottom. We got plenty of gel coat. Like it. I'm curious how many folks out there are avid fishermen. Do you like to use your boats for fishing, or do we have sailors or power boaters out there, or just recreational boaters? Use the tape to try to get any kind of debris or lint, but you can see there's very little material coming off of that tape. That's those Corona glass coater. That's a very decent roller to use for your gel coat work. But yeah, feel free to comment. Let us know what kind of boating you like to do or are interested in doing. If you can DIY some of these projects, it makes boating more attainable. I know a lot of folks will look at boating in general and say, man, it's out of the budget and hard to justify ever having or owning a boat. But it's definitely, if you can find a fixer-upper or a boat in need of some repair, a lot of times you can find some amazing deals on Marketplace and whatnot. I'm just going to get it spread around there, folks, first. I'm not trying to get perfection, just trying to get it all spread out, get the roller all loaded up. I want this bottom really nice and heavy, because as it's kind of going to be slid and moved around, the bottom is going to get more wear and tear. You notice I went across, and then I'm going to kind of go long way. And this is a working tank. It does not have to be super duper cosmetically beautiful. If you did want to spray this, again, remember, it could be done, but you would need a compressor and a spray rig, and you got to be more mindful of overspray when you're doing that as well. And I kind of just like sometimes the simplicity of using a roller, and you can really stack that material on there. Now, what'll happen sometimes, the gel coat, after a couple of minutes of exposure to air, sometimes if you kind of try to come back and roll it too much, it'll add quite a bit of texture to it. Now, for some applications, that's not a problem. If you want a bit of a kind of a non-skid feel, say if it was on the cockpit sole of a boat, a little piece of debris right there. Sometimes you can just use your gloved hand, fingertip. Just be careful that it's not a splinter or something to get underneath your fingernail. That would be really unpleasant. So we're able to use the pan that we used earlier. Sometimes I will put a fresh liner in there, but again, for this is plenty cured, and this material is going to move, or going to cure pretty rapidly on a day like today. Again, usually about an hour and a half between coats if it's fairly warm. It can be the next day, so sometimes we get a lot of questions on that, how long to wait between coats. You could even theoretically wait 2 or 3 days in some cases, but generally, whenever we're doing this, a lot of times we may get 2 coats in a day. And I'm going to start here on this front face and just very methodically start from the top, work my way down right to the edge. Fiberglass Warehouse gel coat covers really nicely. Now, if you're new to the channel, we have over 200 videos, everything from building boats from scratch to renovation or repairing, rebuilding our project boat over there. Tons of how-to and tutorials And we love to hear from everybody. Again, want to know what you enjoy seeing, and maybe you can make some content suggestions. I try really hard to read as many comments as possible. If you wanted to try to wet sand this and polish it out though, sometimes you need to do up to 5 coats of base gel coat to get enough so that when you sand it smooth, there's still material left for coverage. So considerably more material is going to be needed if you're trying to do this in such a way that sometimes we'll just use our finger there to coat and seal. This time of the year is awfully nice, not only for working fiberglass, but the birds are singing. Spring is in the air. Getting close to going fishing in the 29. I am super excited. Make sure we get those corners. Corners usually see a lot of use, a lot of wear there. Little pinhole right there. Sometimes you can take that roller and work that material in, just like so. All right, look at that, folks. We can do a little walk around there. That was almost exactly 16 ounces to do. This box is approximately 4 feet by 2 feet. It's about 18 inches high. That's gonna be fantastic. So I hope that was helpful and informative. If so, always love to ask you guys, if you don't mind, take one moment to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, share, tell a friend, spread the word to the boating community about our channel here at FISHBUMPTV. Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, FISHBUMPTV. My son Logan working hard behind the scenes as my amazing cameraman. We'll catch you in the next episode.